Welcome to When Women Preach. This podcast exists to empower AAPI and Latina women faith leaders. My name is Cris Otonari. We're also here with co-founder and CEO of Isaac, Young Lee Hertig. Our guest for this episode is Margaret Yu. Margaret has been the primary caregiver for her two elderly parents since 2023. She's learning to practically ascribe worth and dignity to her aging parents with God's love. Caregiving has been the greatest and most challenging role of her life. Prior to this, she served as the National Director of Epic Movement, the Asian American Ministry of Cru, where she has served for over 35 years. Her campus experiences span the globe from Milwaukee to Berkeley, to East Asia, to Uzbekistan, or to Orange County, where she currently resides. Margaret's passion is to see BIPOC men and women empowered to take their place in God's kingdom as honored servant leaders. Margaret holds a master's degree in global leadership from Fuller Theological Seminary. She's also a certified personal development life coach with Leader Breakthrough, and she desires to support individuals and leaders in their transitions and in their desires for wholeness. Margaret, welcome to When Women Preach. We're so excited to have you here today.
Well, it's an honor to be here. I love this platform that you guys have.
Welcome. I want to call her Saint Margaret.
Oh, so sweet. Young Lee and I go way back.
Okay, yeah.
I'm so honored by you guys. And I want to say this. There isn't a lot of platforms that actually platform and really connect with API women or Latina women. So this is such an honor space and sacred space. So thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you.
We're really happy to have you.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about how you're currently the caregiver for your elderly parents, and you've described it as one of the most challenging, but also the greatest role of your lifetime. What are some insights or intersections you've discovered through caregiving that also apply to leadership development or life coaching?
Okay, so I'm a leadership geek, so I look through everything through that grid. So I'm going to be geeking out. So this is so fun. So let me first say this, because whenever I speak on being a caregiver, I want to make sure that I tell our sisters and friends that, kind of deciding what to do with your parents in terms of caring for them is a very individual decision. And as Asian Americans or Latino Americans, we already have family pressures and cultural norms that we have internal conflicts with. And so I want to preface this by saying that this is my story. It's not everyone's story. And so that, I just want to say that because it's really important for me. And the second thing is, I think for me, how I began this process was we tried putting my parents in a skilled nursing home for like probably a few months. And during that time, because my parents are immigrants who came to this country, they weren't educated and they don't speak English very much, and they're not really into the American food or culture. So for them, being in a skilled nursing home was really bad. I mean, in that short time, they lost like 30 pounds because they didn't like the food. Skilled nursing home food is really already bad, but it's American food, right? And then just because they couldn't hear, and my parents couldn't hear very well, but also my dad had dementia. So it was just really horrific. I went in there every day, twice a day to make sure they were okay. But it was just not really good for them. And as I began to pray for many months about what to do, the vision that God gave me for doing this in the first place was this vision of ascribing worth and dignity to them. As people get older, or even people in the margins, we, in our society or in this world, we tend to kind of put people aside, and like whether it's the disabled or the elderly. And so what I began to see was that God was giving me this vision of learning what it meant to honor Imago Dei in people. And we talk a lot about that, in America right now. In Christianity, we talk about image bearers. And what I realized was that I get the privilege of ascribing their worth and dignity to them by just caring for them and focusing on them, even though in society, they really don't contribute much. My parents, they don't do anything. They're bedridden. You know what I mean? So they don't really do that much. But I get to say that because they're image bearers, they're worthy of my time and my energy and my focus. And so I left my job to become a primary caregiver. And I think that premise of looking to people as image bearers is really important for leadership development as well. You think about it, if we can each see each person on our team and people we partner with and work with as image bearers, I think that helps us to love and respect them and give them the dignity that they deserve, like every one of us. I think as I long to do that, I learned to do two things that we also do in leadership development, which is if you want to honor and respect someone, you give them choice and voice, right? And so what I mean by that is like, so at the skilled nursing home, they had to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning for breakfast, which we never had breakfast that early, I'm going to say. And it was nasty. And then they would have them eat at 5 o'clock at night. And they would be so hungry, and I would sneak food in at night, and so it was horrible. But the point about that is because the nature of skilled nursing home, everyone eats the same time. They do everything the same. And so what that does is it doesn't really give dignity to individuality of each person. And so what I get to do is give them a voice where I can. When do you want breakfast? When do you want this? And then I also give them a choice or decision on some things that they could choose to do. Like, would you like this or that? And what I've discovered, it reminds them that even though they're bedridden, they actually had a voice. They had a unique contribution in this world. My mom loves gardening. Okay. She loves it. I have a brown thumb. I kill everything in sight. But what I've done at home is like to kind of bring her out there. I wheelchair her out and say, what do you want to do with this, this garden? And she's so good at it. And it reminds her that this is her voice, her uniqueness. My dad was a restaurant owner. He's a chef. So I am learning to be a great chef. But those two things of giving people voice and choice is what we also do to encourage leadership in those around us. And so I think of one of these leadership principles. You guys are leadership geeks too. I know that. Okay. One of the principles that we talk about is that when making a decision as a leader, okay, the person of the people closest to that decision should have more of a say. And if anything, they should actually be part of the decision-making process, to have a voice and a choice. And when people do that, they are reminded of the dignity as unique image bearers. What makes us human? I think, well, I know this is what makes us different from animals is that we actually can choose and make choices. And those things, choice and voice and image bearers, help us to remind each other of each other's dignity and voice. Like young Lee has a unique voice in the kingdom of God that I don't have, but I have a unique voice that she doesn't have. And together we serve God in this beautiful mosaic of God's people. And so that's what I'm learning again, to apply those three things.
Margaret, voice, choice, voice, and you didn't add sacrifice.
Yeah.
What you chose as the national director with the crew, that you sacrificed.
Yeah.
So what does it feel like? Let's be realistic. I told you you are a saint, but day to day, as you continue this caretaking, what's going on in your heart?
I'll be honest. It's hard. Most of my life, it's kind of interesting. My parents were immigrants, and I came here when I was really little. And so my immigrant story is that we were very uneducated economically. We didn't grow up rich. My parents are amazing in what they did with not much. And they put us 5 kids through college and helped us. And I am so grateful for their story and their history and sacrifice, like you said. So for me, like you, a lot of what I do isn't physical. It's not blue collar. I'm not a blue collar person. I was in ministry. I was, you know what I mean? It was more emotional and spiritual work. It was not physical. And so for me, I've had to learn and appreciate the blue collar people that are around us who do so much and serve us, right? And so that's been good for me, but it's also very wearing and tearing on my body. I literally wear braces because it's I have to turn them over and change their diapers and stuff. So it's really hard. I'm very limited. I can't travel anymore. I love to travel, as you know, young lady. I've done a lot of traveling in my day. And so I miss seeing friends. And so there are limitations that are hard. Some days are harder. Some days I just want to cry. Sometimes I want to quit. And I think how I started in this journey has been Isaiah 30:15, 30, was it 30? Yeah, 30:15, something like, this is the, I want to be able to at each step say, this is the way the Lord has called me to it, and I will walk in that way. And so I don't know if I'll do this forever because if I'm not taking care of my body, it's not going to work. But I will listen to the Lord, and however long that will be, you know what I mean? But it is hard. I miss, I miss some things. I feel FOMO, as we talked about that. All my friends are amazing, like you, doing amazing things, and I feel like I'm just sitting as a leader, you know. But I'm also learning that the same things that I'm ascribing to my parents, that they deserve love, care, and compassion and dignity, is the same story for me as well, even if I don't do anything ever again. Does that make sense? And so that's good, but it's also hard. So, yeah, thanks for asking.
Amazing. Yeah, lots to think about there. With your leadership development and how you've been coaching leaders, like, what are some common challenges you see women facing? One example that I think, we all kind of know exists is having women be appropriately paid for what they do. We know that there's still a disparity. How do you help them navigate that space where they have, what did you say, a choice and voice?
That's actually, Young Lee and I were talking about that. Just women, the whole idea of women and money is a big issue. But I think it stems with the challenge for, I think even I've worked with Latina women as well as Asian American women. I think in our communities, women often, not all the time, there's no stereotyping, every woman's different, but I think women oftentimes don't have the self-confidence that they should have about themselves. I listen to women who are amazing leaders, okay, amazing human beings, but they don't have that in them. And I think part of it is the systemic realities of living in a society where, I used to use the word minority. You know what I mean? Minority. We're a minority. Women are minorities, and Asian Americans and Latinas are Latino American, we're minorities. And as I began to think about it, being minority, I was a math major. Okay, I was a geek. Okay, I was a math major, and thinking about what a minority means is that you're less than the majority. You're less than 50. And you think about that, it sounds funny, but that means that every time I call myself a minority, what I'm really saying is that I am less than majority. I'm less than 50%. I am less than. I am less than. And so those things are so much refrained in our minds as women. I've been in the ministry for over 38 years, and you guys can attest to this. How many times have you seen Asian American women or Latino women or BIPOC women actually, especially in white organizations, raise their hand and say, hey, I want more leadership? I haven't seen that much of it in my setting, in college ministry at least. You know what I mean?
Let me flip that narrative. So, in that context, when you do flip that stereotype, raise your hand and speak up because you are mathematically minority. So if you try to amplify your voice 50 more percent, then you are labeled as outspoken, aggressive. And I'm telling you, this comes not just from men or mainstream, that internalized sexism label another woman who don't fit into silent and silenced minority. Label I sometimes get is you're outspoken, and I'm going,
Yeah,
I have to, and I must, because I have to speak more than for myself, my
yeah,
people.
yeah. I'm going to say, I don't know if this has ever been said on your podcast before, young lady. I've known you for many years in the community, and you have this reputation only because you're a outspoken truth speaker, right? They ascribe certain things to you. So therefore, when you think about Asian American women or Latina women, they don't have as much self-confidence because it takes them more to actually suggest that they want more leadership. I can count on my two hands or maybe one how many times I actually heard a woman say, I want more leadership. So my goal in life is to pray that wherever I go, that I would encourage people to say, yes, I want more leadership because we're all leaders,
Mm.
and so, but the confidence is a big thing. And
Mm-hmm,
that kind of runs into immunization of how much you're paid for your services, right?
mm-hmm,
Um, I had a friend recently. I kind of coach her, mentor her, and she is an expert in her field. There's not a lot of women like her who can speak about these topics. And I know I've listened to her. She's fantastic. And she goes, Auntie, this white organization is asking me to speak, spend like a week, like a day and a half with them. She would do 2 main sessions and maybe like a seminar. And she goes, how much do you think should I charge them? Because they're asking me. And I go, well, how much do you usually charge for things like this? What I come to find out is she goes, well, um, I like it when they pay for my plane ticket, which is, of course, yay, yay, that's good. You don't pay for your plane ticket. You don't pay for that yourself. She goes, usually like maybe 300. And I looked at her and I go, huh, you're really good at what you do, right? And so we began to look at it. And again, when I coach women, I often ask them this question. What does it mean that for every dollar that a man makes, that you would make 68 cents or less? What does that do for your ethos, for your
Mm.
soul? What kind of things happen as a result? How will you react and respond? And as they answer, eventually they'll get to the real truth and say, well, sometimes I believe that. Or honestly, I have to prove myself that I'm worth
Mm.
more than that. Both
mm-hmm,
of those responses are very unhealthy, but they don't
Mm.
help your confidence. And that's why women don't ask for more sometimes, And so, and it's awkward for me. I'm going to be honest. This is, okay, I can talk about this, but I'm learning because I was in the ministry. I did everything free.
Mm.
So many things free. And so this thing is hard. I'm not gonna lie and say I got this down. I don't, but I try to help people and myself. And so I went and talked to her about it, and we talked about it, and she goes, yeah, and part of it is, in these white spaces, we're so grateful that we can represent, aren't we? We can represent being women. So we're grateful to even have a voice. But then we kind of go, okay, for free. So the thing that has helped me in talking to women is to say, okay, well, okay, let's say you tell them 300 and they'll say like, we only have a budget. And I'm like, let me just tell you as someone in executive leadership, that's a bunch of bull. They have money. Okay. They do not have a budget. Okay. They have money. They can afford you and more. And so that's what I think. Anyways, so I said, well, let's pretend. Let's say you go back and you say 300 and you do your thing and you're going to be great. So the next person that they decide to hire as a woman or as a BIPOC person, and they hire them to speak and do what you do you think that they're going to expect the pay to be about the same? Yes. And what you've done is you made it harder for those who come after you.
Mm.
And
Mm.
what this is an opportunity for you because these people are inviting you. So therefore, they're honoring your voice as Asian American. So this is your opportunity to teach them about what it means to be an Asian American teacher
Mm.
and what money, how they can pay for the services in a respectful way for BIPOC people. And so I say, why don't you go back and teach them that? Be honest and just say, this is awkward for me because I'm an Asian American woman, but I also know that we're worthy of this. We don't get equal pay. So I just want to be honest with you. And then you tell them what you're worth. And
Yeah.
so she goes, well, how much do you think I should charge? I said, well, just off the top of my head, maybe 3,500 at least, because you're so good at this. She goes, oh, Auntie, I can't do this. Auntie, I cannot, Auntie, when they use Auntie, I can't do this, right? Auntie, I can't do this. I'm like, oh, sure. So you pray about what you want, but I actually think you're worth more than that. And so she came back later. She goes, next week, she goes, Auntie, I did talk to them, this white guy, and I told him how this is the reality of what it means to be a teacher, preacher who's a BIPOC woman. And they were really listening to me. And then I said, that's great. I go, well, how much did you tell them? She goes, well, I couldn't do 3,500. She goes, but I did ask for 1,500. And you know what? That's at least 5 or 6 times more than she usually would get. And I go, well, that's progress of your faith. And so later, 2 weeks afterwards, I saw her and I go, how did it go? I knew it was great. Everyone loved her. I knew that. She goes, yeah. And that guy said that I could have asked for more money. I go, I know. But that's okay. That's a lesson, right? That's a lesson. But it's progress. We need each other to help each other with this whole confidence thing. We are
Yes.
sisters and friends in the journey. And so I think confidence is a big deal for leaders.
Yeah.
It's hard to instill confidence in people. I think confidence is not one of those things that you teach, but it's so
Right.
important for leadership, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
So important.
absolutely.
So that's one thing is I talk about money, but I also do the feedback thing that actually Young Lee and I have been talking about this. I once coached this woman. She was not an Asian American woman, but she had a lot of the cultural norms that she grew up in an Asian American context in some ways, the way she looked at things. She was a white woman. She was also my friend. So leading is hard when you're leading your friend and supervising at times. So that's another story. But when I became the director, I asked her this question. It's about voice. I said, well, what do you bring to your role on this team? You've been here for 7 years. What do you bring? What do you think you bring? And honestly, she really was very generic. You know how people kind of hem and haw? She was hemming and haw. And actually, a lot of women don't know. Even some of them are older and they don't know. And I go, wow, okay. I said, well, you know what? My job is for the next year is to make sure that you know what you're good at. And then I warned her. Okay, I warned her. I said, okay, I'm going to be honest. So how I'm going to do that is by giving you constant feedback. Okay. So again, because she couldn't, she had worked with this guy for many years, this white guy. She couldn't tell me what he would say about her very much either, because he didn't give her a lot of feedback. So I go, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable, and at times you're not going to like me, but I'm going to, at every turn, as much as I can, whatever you do, I'm going to give you feedback. And I did for the next year. In fact, it was so uncomfortable halfway through it, we couldn't be friends, if that makes sense. Because it was like I represented work to her, But everything she did, I would tell her what she was good at. And I said, you did great in this, but you know what? This probably you could have done differently. And what do you think? How did you think you did? We would have these conversations for a whole year. So at the end of that time, I asked her the same question the first year. I said, well, what do you bring to this team? What do you think? And she was able to list all the great contributions that she's able to make. She had built her confidence, but it's based on honest, loving, supportive feedback that helped her grow. Because that's true for me too. If Young Lee tells me you're really good at this, it helps me in my confidence. Or when she says, well, maybe you should try this, it helps me to look at my leadership. If we're humble enough to receive it, we will grow in our confidence in our leadership. And so I think that's another way. Young Lee is really big on that, as you know. So I love that Pastoral Lab is about feedback.
And I'm deeply grateful for you because during your demanding season, you said yes. And I'm looking forward to your influence and how Pastoral Lab Orange County will come alongside and accompany and be accompanied by these great saints. I
It's going to
mean,
be so fun.
one of them is just so precious. So thank you, Margaret.
Oh, it's
I can,
so fun. It's an honor.
yeah.
I'm excited for your cohort.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm such a geek. Me too. I get to eat with them and talk about leadership. What's there not to like? Right?
I love that because in this challenging season for you, you have kind of integrated, the two things
Mm-hmm.
um, that are your ministry, and you get to find great purpose in both. So, yeah, I love
And I
that for
think it's
you.
being yourself, right? You're going to be yourself wherever you go, even if you don't have a title or whatever. I hope to be myself wherever I go, and so this is me
I
and these
sense that.
opportunities.
Hopefully it'll be a respite for you.
It's such an honor. Seriously, I'm so grateful for the Pastoral Lab program. It is so humbling to be a part of it and to walk with women.
I just want to ask you one last question. You've given some great stories and examples of some of the people that you've coached through and help them reach their potential as leaders. And a lot of people, I think you've coached some people through some like significant transitions.
Mhm.
And we know that life, like what you're in right now, has a lot of unpredictable challenges. So how do you help them kind of navigate that space, and where do you think we should place our identity and worth to stay
Yeah,
grounded?
such a good question. I think what I would say is, when the storms come, it is better if we're prepared. And
Mm,
so, how I would answer that is how I coach people. And so, that most people who seek coaching or mentoring, 75% of them or so are actually in a transition. And so, I
mm,
do get to meet
wow.
people in
Okay.
transitions. That makes sense, right? They're
It
like,
does
oh,
kind of make sense.
I just had a baby. I just lost my job. I just started a new job, whatever. And so,
Mm,
the program that I did my certification in, they really believe in looking at life from a grand perspective. And they did a lot of research and found that there were four things that leaders and people who do well, who finish well in their lives, there were four things that they really focus on. And they listed just arbitrarily, so you don't have to list it this way, but I kind of like it. It's called TRAC, TRAC. So the first one is trajectory, that it helps to look at your life, the trajectory of it as long term. So whatever decision or whatever crisis that's happening right now, it's just part of a bigger picture of my life, right? And so, and in trajectory, those who do well look at their lives not as short term, but really long term development. That I want to keep growing. I want to, make
mm,
decisions in light of long term. And so that's T. So to steward that in our lives, to have that kind of lens about our lives. The R is replenishment. Think about
mm,
it. When unexpected crises come, you guys, the LA fires, that was unpredictable. But if you were encountering that at a point in your life when you were already burnt out,
mm,
it would be hell.
yeah.
But if you were encountering the fires when you had some energy, because you made some choices in always replenishing yourself, always
Mm,
growing, always replenishing your soul, your physical care, then you're stronger to handle the challenges and the transitions and the crises in life, right? And so replenishment is really important. We know that, right, as leaders. We
Yep.
cannot do anything without that self care and soul care. So that's replenishment. That's R. The A is awareness. And this is what I think what you're
mm,
talking about, the identity.
mm,
When you go through a crisis, think about the last time you were really rocked to your world, where maybe some people misunderstood you, there was a lot of pain, or you lost your job, whatever it was. Those are hard times, and in hard times, we know what happens is that you can lose yourself
Mm-hmm.
mm,
because you're so
mm,
hurt, you're so tired, you're just so broken. And so those who deal with the unpredictables and the transitions in life do better if they keep on growing in awareness of who they are and who they're not. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
During a crisis, you're scrambling to make decisions. Even COVID, remember COVID? That's another session. Like, how do you lead through COVID? That was hard for leaders, right? But if
Yes.
you know who you are, then you're not going to scramble to make dumb decisions just because other
Mm.
people are doing it. You realize this is who I am and this is who I'm not. This is what I bring, the voice, and this is what I don't bring. And it helps you in life to,
Mhm.
to have a growing awareness of who you are, your own voice, so that you stay authentically yourself even through the crisis, that your values are intact, you know. And the last one is choice. Leaders who do well, who finish well with their lives, they steward choice.
Mhm.
They see it, those who are believers, they see it as a chance, an opportunity, an invitation by God to step out in faith, and that they make choices in light of the bigger picture of the whole lives. They don't just make one, on the dot decisions, but they look at the bigger picture. And so those four things are areas that we can focus on especially during crisis, transitions, to work on. There are some areas that you might work on that may affect one other, And so most people come to me wanting to make decisions, but as we talk and we walk through some things, they realize, no, I think I actually need replenishment,
Mm.
because as I receive replenishment, the decision is really easy, right? And so that's what I get to do. So I love it. So
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Wow. I just am so delighted to have you and amplify your voice and your life and your choice through this podcast. I think we are approaching 7,500 downloads. So we are in the business of amplifying API and Latina woman's voice in this day and age. We surely need that.
amen.
Yes.
Amen. Thank you, you
Thank
guys.
you.
My name is Joana. I am the sound producer for our podcast, When Women Preach. Thank you to all of our listeners who support us from wherever you are. We believe that the voices of Asian American and Latina women of faith are crucial to the building up of our faith communities and Isaac's mission to advance equity at the pulpit. So we invite you to continue supporting us by inviting your friends and family to listen to our podcast, or by making a donation to www.isaacsweb.org. Thank you in advance for making this work possible.